Hey everyone, I'm out here in the garage and what we're going to be doing today is replacing the steering rack on the 2004 Honda Pilot. So stay tuned. So if you're new to the channel, I just want to welcome you here and hopefully you'll consider subscribing if you like what you see. Also, check out Car Apprentice on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I post lots of pictures and videos on those platforms before I post anything on YouTube. And occasionally I'll post things on those platforms I don't post on YouTube. Also, check out the website at carapprentice.com. And don't forget to hit the like button if you like this video. And one last thing, check the video's description for some of the products used in this video. So today we're going to be replacing the rack and pinion or the steering rack in the 2004 Honda Pilot. This is going to be a little bit of a different video, so there might be a little bit of choppiness here. I hope not. I'm going to try to stitch everything together because it became a little bit of a comedy of errors. And so I'm going to kind of chronicle the whole thing in addition to actually replacing the steering rack. So how this all came about is that we had a little bit of a steering wander issue where the car would kind of veer to the left or right as you drove down the street. And also on occasion we had a little bit of a clunk noise. And that seemed to be coming from the driver's side. Now, I did go on the driver's side and grab the wheel at 9 and 3. I didn't really notice much play, but I did later on check it and find that yes, I did indeed have some play, but that play was not related to the steering rack, oddly enough. So I just wasn't quite sure what was going on. I just decided to go ahead and pull the steering rack and take a closer look at it. I thought possibly the rack bushings were bad. So we'll do a little more checking and diagnosis later on. But without further ado, let's get into replacing the steering rack on the 2004 Honda Pilot. Okay, so I'm going to pull this power steering reservoir out of the bracket. Just lift it out. You can see the bracket right there. I'm going to take the bracket. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but there is a bracket right here that the power steering reservoir rests on. So I'm going to pull that out so I have some space to work here. That's a 10 millimeter. Alright, so we're going to put some paper towels down in here before I take anything apart. I'm going to cover this area. Oops. Alright. Then I have a container. This is a, what is this? 6-cup container that we're going to use. That's what it looks like right there. One other thing I'm going to do too, I'm going to take this reservoir out, the coolant. Just kind of set it aside. It gives us a lot more space to work. Drop this in here. There we go. That's in there. I'm going to also grab some paper towels and cover the belts over here too. Cover that area up. We shall see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to undo this hose clamp right over here. And hopefully we can direct the fluid into that container. Slide that over that way. Take this off. There we go. I'm going to let the reservoir drain first. I'm going to kind of hold both of these at the same time. Get most of the fluid out of the reservoir first, and then I'll work on this other hose here where my right hand is, which is this one here. So I'll let that drain for a second. I do have some UV dye in there too. That's why it looks a different color. Alright, So I'm just going to stuff some paper towels in this outlet here. If I had a rubber cap, I'd use that, but I don't have anything like that, so I'm just going to make do with what we got. Just kind of stuff it in and twist it. Alright, so now we're going to drain the steering system. So I'm going to put this hose, this is a 5/16 inside diameter and 7/16 outside diameter hose, clear vinyl. I'm going to put this inside this hose here and clamp it down. Yeah, definitely do not try a 1/4" hose. That will not work very well. You'll just have fluid going all over the place. So the 5/16 should work just great. There we go. It goes in there. Try to get it in a little further here. There we go. All right. That should not move. Let me check here. Oh yeah, it's pretty tight. Okay, then we'll just put the other end of the hose inside our container. All right, so to keep this from shooting out of here, what I'm going to do is zip tie this hose to this power steering hose here, and hopefully that'll keep it stationary. Alright, so I'm going to be off camera for a little bit here. What I'm going to do is turn the steering wheel from lock to lock, after I start the car, of course. And we're going to get all the fluid, as you can see right now, is already some starting to come out of there. We're going to have the fluid run through this hose and into this container here. So, again, hopefully we won't create a big mess. If we do, I do have a pan on the ground just in case. I'm hoping it doesn't spray all over the place and get on our belts, but maybe it's just me just being a little bit overcautious here. So we'll give this a shot and see what happens. Alright, so it appears to be pretty well drained. I'm going to turn the car off now. Alright, so I'm just going to put everything back together since we're done draining the system. I'm going to take this off here. So I think I'm going to put the hose back on first so I'm not fighting with this possibly spilling and then also fluid coming out of here. Clamp back. Okay, pull that out. Take this hose out. Oops, there we go. I think that's good. Get this out of here. And we'll just put our bracket back in. So I'm going to do that off camera. You don't need to watch me do that. I'm just going to put the bracket back in here and then put the reservoir back on the bracket. Alright, so everything's put back together over in this area and we will continue on. Alright, so we need to remove the steering wheel, so we're going to disconnect the negative battery cable, 10 millimeters. Set that aside. Alright, so with the negative battery cable off, you do need to wait about 3 minutes so the SRS system can discharge. By the time we get to the point of removing the steering wheel, we should be well past the 3 minutes though. To remove the steering wheel, we first need to remove the steering wheel's airbag. So I have a long T30 torque socket I'm going to use to remove the 2 airbag screws. Make sure the front wheels are pointed straight ahead beforehand. Alright, so we've got several connectors to disconnect. We've got this one here. We've got this white one over here. And this one up here. So you just press down on this little tab right there. Slide that up that way and then pop it off. And there's our airbag. Alright, so I'm going to remove this nut. Use the impact, 19 millimeter. The puller I'm going to use is the Lyle 45000. It comes with a couple bolt sizes, and I'll use the small bolts for the pilot steering wheel. I'll wrap some tape around the threads about 5 threads up from the end to prevent us from screwing the bolts in too far, causing damage to the cable reel. Alright, so I've got the puller here. Got a little bit of grease on the threads. I also spun this out a little bit. I think this is a 14 millimeter. Or 9/16 possibly. Go ahead and put this in. Turn this in. That's good there, I think. You kind of feel it hit, so I'm going to stop right there. So 14 millimeters. Just going to use a ratchet. There we go. So let's pull this whole thing off. And there's our steering wheel. See right here, this is our cable reel. We definitely don't want to move this, so we're going to leave that where it is. I think it was like that. This is the top here. Next, I'm going to remove the plastic steering wheel column cover so we can get at the steering joint. Alright, so I'm going to remove these two clips first. There's one here. This one I can just pull off by hand. And the second one is way up above. Here's that one. Alright, so I need to peel back the carpet. To give myself a little room to work, I am going to take this clip out here. Just pull the carpet up like that. Pop that out. Let's see here. Yeah, there we go. Now, if you want to, you could take this side panel out. This doesn't take much work to get it out. I'm going to try to avoid that, so I'm just going to peel the carpet back a little bit more. If I can. This little footrest over here on the left, it's kind of preventing that from happening. Okay, so we got most of it exposed there. So I'm just going to take this clip out, spin it out, and then pop it off. There is one more over here. Get this one first. There's that one. Alright, so I ended up just giving in and taking the cover off over here. because that clip is right behind. It was tucked right in this corner over here, and it's really hard to get off without taking that out. There it is, pretty easy. There we go. Okay, pull that down like so. And out. All right, so I've got the impact in here. Make sure it's going the right direction. There we go. There's that bolt. All right, so let's go after the second bolt above. Get on there nice and flush. Pull that out. And then we're just going to pull the steering joint up and away from the rack. Like that. Alright, so I'm going to take these two bolts off here. Power steering pump, 10 millimeters. Let's try an extension on that one. Alright, so I'm going to take the clamp bolt off over here. That's 10 millimeters. Okay. Not much coming out of there at all. I am going to stuff a little paper towels in here. I'm just going to leave that too, just in case it decides to leak. Just going to leave it like that. It's difficult to get a shot of it, but this sensor connector needs to be disconnected. Alright, so there are a couple of 14 millimeter engine mount bolts we need to remove. One here and one here. Alright, so we're going to remove the tie rod on this side and the other side. So this cotter pin needs to come out first. Alright, just going to cut the tail off here. Okay, we're going to take this nut off here for the tie rod, 19 millimeter. I'm going to use air tool so I don't cause the wheel to move. Okay, and we need to pop this out, so I'm going to put the nut back on. Get nice and flush there. Okay, I'm going to slide this ball joint removal tool in. And I have grease on the forks right there and grease on the threads. 19 millimeter. There we go. Wow, that was really tough. Did not expect that. So that's off. Tie rod is out. Looks like we lost some grease too. Gotta keep an eye on that. That's quite a bit of grease to lose, but if we have to replace the tie rod ends, we'll do that too. Alright, so we're on to the passenger side now. Okay. Alright, so we're going to take this plate down here. So we're going to do this side first, and we'll do the other side. There's 4 bolts, they are 14 millimeters. I'm going to use an impact. Alright, so amazingly I have to take the exhaust apart. Not expecting to have to do that, but makes sense. So we're going to disconnect the cat from the muffler pipe here, and I'm going to use some fire on this. I was going to use liquid wrench penetrating oil, which works pretty well, but I think I'm going to use fire on this one. Alright, so I've got the MAP Pro Gas torch. I'm just going to start with this one here, see how it goes. Hopefully that'll be a good sign. We can get this one off, that the other two will come off fairly easily too. And I am going to use beeswax, so I've got a tray on the ground here, one of those metal pans. There we go. Sorry, I think I accidentally hit the button to stop recording. The first and second nuts came off very easily with the impact in a 14 millimeter impact socket. Alright, so we get this last nut out of here. That is really hot. Alright, so we're going to separate this here. May want to get a pry bar, but I'm going to try it by hand. Okay, I'm going to remove these 2 bolts right here for this mount. That's going to drop the cat down. 12 millimeters. Alright, so I'm going to disconnect this power steering pressure switch right there. Alright, so I disconnected the power steering pressure switch. I could not get that on camera. It is really hard to get undone. So you press down on the tab right here and try to slide it off, but that line actually moves on you, so you can't really get good leverage on it. So it might take a little bit of time to get that off. You could try putting a screwdriver between this part and that body over there and just kind of twisting it. That might help too. Alright, so I'm going to remove this propeller shaft protector right here. Those are 12 millimeters. There's 2 bolts. Alright, so I'm going to use this scissor jack from the cargo area, and I'm going to jack it up all the way to the tube here in the front. I have a 22 millimeter socket. Okay, stop right there. So I'm putting a block of wood on top of my jack pad, and I'm going to jack that up to the center of the transfer case. Alright, so I'm in the front of the car. Here's the front tube. I'm going to loosen this 17. I'm not taking it out, just loosening it. Then we're going to remove these 2 17s. So it needs to come down about 1 inch and 3/16. Alright, so there's 1 inch and 3/16. You've got probably another 1/4 inch to go. There was a little space created at the top up there, so I may not come down much more. I might just leave it as is for now. Alright, so on to the passenger side. You can see it kind of dropped a little bit, so I think I'm going to stop right there. This is really loose too. Alright, so I'm going to take these 2 17s out on the passenger side, and we'll go to the driver's side. Alright, so we're on the driver's side now. I'm going to remove this bolt here, and we need to take that one off also. I'm going to take this one out first on this side and the one on the other side. Just want to make sure that we're not going to have any issues with this whole thing coming down on us. We have the jack underneath the transfer case, so we should be fine. Alright, so this is the area we're working in right now. We're right by the lower control arm. Right there, you can see the control arm. Alright, so we are on to the passenger side. Same bolt. Okay, so far so good. Since that worked out, we're going to go after this one next. That's a long bolt. All right, so we're going to take the long bolt out on the driver's side. So what we're going to do now is lower the subframe 1 15/16 inches. So right now we've got probably about, I'd say about a ½ inch. The other side is probably closer to 3/4 of an inch. I need to be careful here. So all I'm doing is lowering the jack under the transfer case. Let's see, that's getting there. The other side is a little lower. So I might call it good here and see if we need more space. Alright, so we've got a couple power steering line bolts to remove. You can see one right there where the socket is. That's a 10mm. You may want to use an offset or use 1/4 inch tools because it's very little access in that area. Second one is kind of hard to point out. It is right, I think this is it right here. Right there where my finger is. Both 10mm. I'm going to do both of those off camera. Next up is disconnecting the high pressure line from the steering rack, which requires a 14mm crow's foot or flare wrench. I had trouble removing this line on the CRV I used to own because the crow's foot socket I used expanded while trying to turn the nut. Very frustrating. I read on a forum that many have had success with these 14mm snap-on sockets that can be found on eBay for around $20. The part number is FRHM14. Alright, so there's my setup. I'm using a snap-on line wrench. I've got a 1/2 inch ratchet with a 3/8 inch adapter for a little leverage. So we're going to see how this goes. So hopefully I don't block your view, but it's quite possible that may happen. Let's see what we got here. There we go. That was easy. Okay, so I got it moving. That's always the white knuckle part of doing this, is getting it moving. So I got it moving, and I'm just going to reposition this, and I also probably should get a pan and put it underneath here just in case it leaks fluid. So that's a good sign though. So definitely I would use a snap-on tool. I would not use one of the cheap auto parts stores wrenches. So what I'm going to do now is just go ahead and spin this out the rest of the way, and we'll continue on. So one thing I forgot to mention is to spray this area off with some brake cleaner or some other solvent so that's nice and clean, so you don't introduce any junk into the line when you put this all back together. I did not do that, but my undercarriage, as you can see, is pretty clean. So that line is off now. Just be careful to not bend it. But once it gets started, you really can spin it off by hand and it should come out, depending on, of course, where you live. If you have a lot of rust, then you may have some trouble. Alright, so that clamp right there needs to be loosened, 10mm, and then there's a hose that needs to be pulled off the steering rack. So I'm going to do that off camera because I can't really get a camera in this area very well. Hose pliers work well for forcing the line off the rack's outlet. Alright, so I've got 2 bolts to take out. This one I have the socket on, and then one on the opposite side over there. Have a long handle ratchet because this is on pretty tight. Alright, so I have shifted the hose, or this hose assembly here to the right. Got my ratchet in there and 14 on there. You can see this one swivels a little bit, so that helps us out. We're going to get that loose now. Alright, so we're going to take the bracket off. You can see the arrow right there on the top pointing to the front of the car. Alright, so I'm going to get these two 17s out. One here and one up there. There's one. Alright, so we're going after this 14 millimeter right here. There is a nut on top, so that's why I was holding my hand up there, as you can see. Alright, so after going on a mini treasure hunt for this last bolt, it is right up here, right inside there. Hopefully you can see it right there. That's a very interesting spot for a bolt. So we're going to take that out. It looks like a 14, I'm going to guess. Let's have an extension, a 14 millimeter deep, and then an adapter. These are all 3/8 tools. So the space between the top of the bolt and the underside of the bracket is very limited, so I'm using 3/8 tools here. And I've got a breaker bar. I'm going to keep this nice and flush so I don't strip the bolt. I think it's free now. There we go. There's the bracket. The bolt is inside here. Alright, so it looks like the rack is ready to come out. I'm going to take the cushion off now on this side. Alright, we're going to try to slide the steering rack out now. Caught on something over there. There it goes. Alright, there it is. So you may want to get a second pair of hands to do this, but it is out. So I checked the steering rack bushings with the screwdriver and they look just fine.